Hi, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. We've had quite a bit of cool weather, I guess, in the last little while in the States and in Canada. Quite a bit of a turn, and looks like we're going to get into warmer weather. Up here, warmer weather is -8, -10, something like that. So there are a few questions, and I think generally speaking, there are some similarities to some of the questions, but not all. So maybe this one is kind of a rebuttal by Michel Laramé on a question that he had that we were talking about a few weeks back. And so here we go. Let's see what we're up to. I just wanted to be precise about asking about belief systems last week, a couple of weeks ago. It's not that I don't want them. They are vital because they're like a drive for us. I would kind of agree with that. Otherwise, it would be like a car without an engine, and you can't go far without some form of belief from Michel's point of view. Having faith, hope, these sentiments are very important to us, and he's aware of that, he says. But in the meantime, concerning higher beings, do they still need belief systems? In other words, when we will know, and this he's using this particular word because he doesn't know any other word to use, and it makes sense. Our own nature, when we'll know our own nature, the nature of a higher aspect of us that lies within us, that loving nature, who we really are, when we no longer have to reincarnate, okay? When we do no longer feel like we're separated from everything, when we will get back to permanent consciousness, permanent awareness of that higher state, he's saying, will we still need to believe in something? It's, and he goes on, he's thinking on paper, which is really interesting. It's a good idea. Seems to me that at that point, we will become the object of our belief. And I'm not so sure I agree with that one, only because it's not like an aim that you have, like a goal, even though we talk about it like a goal, I guess. But it's more like an engagement with an awareness of the existence of us at another level, as well as the existence of us at this level. So why continue to believe in what we have become ourselves? We live in a very interesting plane of existence, Michel, and in spite of all that we can think about and relate to, and we attempt to do that, there is a basic tenet, and one of the tenets is really, really difficult for us to kind of put our finger on, is what that experience of being in a relationship with the higher state is until we actually have an experience of it. And then prior to that, we read a whole lot of stuff that implies, we have inferences of what that might be like. And in fact, these are descriptions of possibilities. You may even have a description of how it is. But relating to that experience is not an intellectual thing. It's an experiential thing. It's quite different. Um, and there are many stages of that very existing thing. And one could ask, is there a purpose for having many stages? Could ask that. And I would have to think that there would be, because we also have many stages of our relationship here as well. Um, you mentioned belief systems, and it's my understanding that what you believe in currently is part and parcel to what you have attempted to understand in your earlier years, plus probably reactions against that if you're normal, and then a revision of what that should be like, and then perhaps a reaction against that too, and then another revision of what that should be like. And if you have a sense of humor, um, perhaps you begin to realize that when you're looking back, there's a little piece of something in anything that you believed in that may make a little bit of sense. Not always true that it all makes sense, because we're human beings and we try to cultivate um, an understanding of something, of how something should be prior to the point that it is. And this concept of knowing in the Eastern tradition is an expression that relates to the experience and the understanding of a relationship with the higher state. It's an actual experience. And that has many levels as well. Now, why should that be that there are so many levels of stuff? And I don't know whether this makes any sense to you, Michelle, but it sure makes sense to me. We can come up with all kinds of ideas and options about what things should be like and how they are and how they aren't. But if you can relate to the experience of any aspect of an expression of a deep level of perceiving energy flow into you, then you are beginning to experience. Prior to that, in our world, our best cultivation is our imagination's view and our intellectual or emotional view of how things should be based on whatever experience we've had, or whatever we come up with in terms of what we currently believe might be true. In that particular instance, if you currently believe that something should be more true, then it will be honestly an aspect of what you come up with. It is biased. Yes, I agree. Um, Nonetheless, if you actually notice something, and I think in your particular case, uh, a short time ago when you had experiences related to a an increase in expression of the flow in you, that was fairly mm, strong enough to and it would with anyone make you kind of sit up and take notice. Oh my God, what's this? What is that? Both perfect questions to ask. And anyone who has experiences with that inner flow should ask these questions and then sit back and realize that this is something that is outside perhaps beliefs or biases that people have around, especially around spiritual growth. By the way, it's also true in relationship to life. if you haven't experienced a certain thing, you can have opinions about it, but it doesn't make any sense that you can actually know what's going on in another until you have had some kind of a similar experience to them. Um, so, the good thing about all of that is you're accumulating different levels of understanding in these planes about something that exists and coexists, rather, I should say, in both planes. But in these planes, we're not very aware of the various levels of another state. Now, that seems like bypassing your question a little bit, and I don't think it is, because going from the coarser levels immediately to being adrift someplace and you're in a super high state and therefore don't come back into here, but that's not even relevant. You may come back into these states just to help these states through emanation or energy operating through you. And if you do that, you are helping the coarser states. But that's one way to look at it. I happen to think that that's kind of an interesting thing. But also to move into a different state, like many Hindu yogis have discussed, is to never come back here anymore. I don't want any more of this stuff. Yet the Buddhists look at it from a different point of view. If you reach into an extremely high state, but you want to come back to be of help, to be of service in relationship to helping others who are not at that particular spot where they can let go of these planes so easily, then you would come back for the helping of others. That's a dialogue that relates to Buddhism, and the first was a dialogue that relates to many Hindu yogis that I've talked about or talked to. Whatever that is in you is only going to be known by you as that love expresses itself in you beyond the bias of Michelle, beyond the bias of Ron, beyond the bias of, put a name there, it doesn't matter what it is. While we're here, it matters what we say and what we do, apparently. To us, primarily. And that's a key. Everyone, certainly who's listening, but everyone who you can ever engage with, if you can engage with 8 billion people, would have something to say about that. Because it's part of our attempt to understand our relationship with these planes, and also to cultivate a kind of intelligence, cultivate a kind of emotional balance, an image of a form that looks like you, looks like me, looks like somebody else. Doesn't matter who it looks like. And then understand by looking at that image is the cultivation of many years of an attempt to make some sense of the world that we live in. Plus, if you have a spiritual bent or are trying to make sense of a spiritual bent, then you're trying to cultivate an angle from that perspective, relative still to the images that you project in relationship to others, as well as yourself. Now, this is valuable no matter what level of engagement that you're attempting to be involved with, no matter what our biases are. For example, if you are a member of a particular church, and you haven't been there for years, and you have a little bit of awareness, here's a journey for you. Walk back into that church. I don't care who you are. I'm not talking about it in the shell. And keep your focus off of your biases. Never mind what you think about that church. Walk back in and see if you can perceive the glow of a relatively safe place on a day, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it happens to be, and be there for the purpose of engaging with the higher state and see if you can perceive what occurs in that moment. You will attempt to do that, and you can. There is a sense of loving there. I don't care what, beside a tree, if that's where your church is, beside an animal, dog or a cat that you look at, and they look back at you with a sense of loving. And you're touched by that. If you don't like that kind of a dog, you can bias that touch. You can say, I don't like that dog. Ugh, I hate those kinds of dogs. They're very, I don't know, just never been a great dog for me. You can look at birds in the sky. You can engage with a bird. If you can perceive the life force in that bird, as in other human beings, then try to cultivate softening your bias down, because you will have something to say emotionally, mentally, honestly, but physically as an image structure of a form. Let's call that form George or Ron, or I don't care what you call it. Because the perceiving of the energy coming from that system is biased by the biases that occur in the individual who's looking at that form. It's a no-brainer. You're an intelligent person. I try to be. I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and this is Thursday, so look out for that. The issue is we have a brain, this brain thing. We have elongated axons that go all the way down through the nervous system, down into it, right into our feet and our knees and our arms. And what we do is we take a measure of people, but no, not only people, ideas, not only ideas, a reflex response to our experience of the past. And then we, unknown to us, we sense the energy coming at us, and we call it, if it's the color red, we see that energy and we call it red. We see this energy and we call it green. We see this energy and we call it violet or gold or whatever. But we don't take 10 seconds or 2 seconds to even think that we are a sensory system, and we are going to bias what energy comes in based on our personalized versions of what must be valued. And this is a level of development. Your conscious awareness of the fact that you do these things, or I do these things, or others do these things, is intermittent at best. Ultimately, at one level, it's still a part of this coarser level. And this is one that I think is really valuable, and you may or may not agree with me on this. As your perception increases, you're aware of energy in you and through you, but also you're aware that you have to engage with life. You have to do things here. But you're asking a variety of questions. One of them is, once you get to only be thinking about higher states, and I would say, chances are you're not thinking about them. You're within them, perceiving them as a conscious being, knowing and wondering. Doesn't make sense. Perceiving, recognizing, instantly understanding that an individual you're watching maybe is doing the best she or he can in relationship to what they're dealing with, what their sensory system is providing, what their biases are providing as an understanding of something that's external to them. By perceiving inside of them up through this system here of what they're perceiving must be because they have experienced these responses relatively, even if they're unconsciously perceived, they come up with, we come up with a biased rendering of what's there. So I've always felt that it was really important to increase the level of perception that an individual has of a sense of kind of loving inside themselves. And this idea of hope, another question came in from very, very good question, Michelle. From Deborah Oleshansky in Tennessee, around the idea of hope. Very, very interesting. These concepts of, and they're belief systems. It's true. The power of a single word that has meaning to you. But it's not the same on a higher state. It's the glow of knowing you know this, and there's no negation in it. There's no elevation in it. There's straight perception in it. Now, I have to tell you, not just a minute, out of all of this, and I really think what I've said is apropos. One could say it's a bias, Michelle. It's true. But when you ask, like I said before, belief systems are so important right now for all of these reasons, and I totally agree. Belief systems are important, but they are also the source of so much suffering, and you point that out. They have, as an ideal, belief systems around God, and we fought wars over them. This makes no sense to me either. But it does make sense if you have a version that you totally believe in, and this is you on a coarser level, or me on a coarser level as 6 or 7 other people or nations, call them whatever you want, and they have a real sturdy belief in what is important, because if you don't believe in it, they don't like you. This, to me, has always been nonsense. But if you look at, for example, you and I go out and we start studying, and people should be doing this, and they're not, because they're hooked on their own biases, and I don't blame them at all, because we have biases, you and I. Don't tell them, for God's sakes, that we might be hooked on too. It's possible. The issue is, if you start looking at all of these religious ideals and beliefs, but you're looking for something that is within them all, not the flavor of the month, not this one versus that one. You're looking for the very thing that is within them, that is related to loving, that related to a unification of a kind of a relationship with that higher state flow. Somehow, at these coarser levels, that's a tough one. Unless you're slowly beginning to perceive, just perceive that flow inside of you when you engage with another. And you don't pay very much attention to what they're saying. You don't pay any attention to what they're wearing. You don't pay any attention to how their hair is not cut for a long time. The age of them, the color of them, the way they think things have to be. You start looking inside of you and you start perceiving where those internal plexus are slowly engaging, perceiving what is coming in, perceiving, sending it up to the brain, and then coming down to perceive where it is in you, where it's affecting you, touching you is what I should have said. Never mind the effect. And you are perceiving it slightly in the heart, slightly in your belly, slightly in the gonad center and the root center, but also slightly in the throat, tiny bit in the brow center. Oh, your eye is scratching on the side. Your ears, you can't figure out what's going on in this part of your neck. You're actually perceiving at a relative level of what the ancients used to call an engagement with a higher state. Yes, relative to the chakras or Sephiroth or fireballs or whatever, depending on where you are, what you might call them. These traditions were not lying. They were being honest. But then they became affected by biases. This doesn't really mean this, it more means that. And never mind being, if you're too welcoming of other, people who believe that way, they'll take advantage of you and make you believe that way too. Well, maybe they had a point. But here's the one thing that they did say, and it's consistent. Let's only talk about the things that are on the surface. Because if we tell them things that are deeper, and really deeper, they either will not believe us, and they didn't, or they will say that they do too, and they will want to be recognized for their self-importance. And it becomes self-important only because the individual's personality is elevating itself to a position of grandeur at the levels that you're talking about. There's no grandeur. There's no elevation. There's no putting down of people. Of course, that's the way I'm thinking. And that's partly my experience with some of these folks that I've met. I've been open enough to be straight with what I've encountered so that hope would be glistening in the back of people's minds, that there is hope for us to move past a place where we're not open enough to allow ourselves to consider the possibility that our biases are not as real or as true as what we believe. And this business of truth is relative. It's all relative. Less relevant, very relative. Now I'm going to turn that table. If you are where you are, if I am where I am, my truth, my belief will help me if I leave myself open enough to go to a different understanding by still allowing myself to question my own relationship with how I see things. It's important, but also there's little gaps of time that we all need to sit with an understanding of something. If you put on top of understanding a level of perception that is different than the one you had 10 years ago, it changes everything. It makes it more uncomfortable. I'm being honest. Because you're diversifying. The defenses become different. Why am I defending this? Why is this like this? What about this hope thing? It was brought up, and also, as I said before, Deborah's question, really key. See if this fits. I don't know how this will work. She says, during these days of multiple challenges, I am reminded of lessons related to hope, and specifically lessons of moral imperative of hope in times of darkness and uncertainty. I'm wondering about the energetic nature of hope and how it manifests and assists. I like this question, and I like yours. They're along, in a kind of a way, the same line, because without hope, our reactions pull us down. With hope, say, okay, I'm having a reaction. Easy, easy, easy. This is a reaction. How long am I allowed to have a reaction? As long as you want. You're allowed that. Do I have an option to lessen the time? Yeah, you have an option. It depends on the effects of the occurrences around you, the circumstances in which you find yourself, the circumstances through which you have created images around how you need to function in the world, or how a world is affecting you. All of these things are very important to us on these coarser levels. Hope. I once had a conversation with somebody that told me it was stupid to have hope. I don't agree with that. I never have. If we can allow ourselves to remain open, hope is a very constructive thing. In many of us, it's a constructed thing. We construct our versions of these things, and we believe that they may be valuable, and then we start defending them, and they become not really hopes, but they become identifiers of us as an individual. It happens. Not negative, just identifiers. You drive a whatever color car you do. I drive another car. It's a different color. Oh, there's Ron's car. Oh, there's Michelle's car. Oh, there's Deborah's car. There's Marlene's car. Whoever. Identifiers. And if we're not careful, Those identifiers are the only things that we think of. If you're going to use one, grab onto hope, because it's akin to loving. Now, a lot of people would say, yeah, but it's fragmentary, it's fantastical, it's imaginary. Maybe it is. But all of our biases are fragmentary pieces that we lock together. All of our ways of looking at life are imaginative. They're not exactly the way you see things, and how you see things is not exactly true. They're versions of how your biases come up with quite quickly, actually, immediately, with a resolution of some kind. You put them together with other resolutions and you consider them to be quite astute. You should keep those until you have the ability to let them go. A little bit at a time. You don't have to do that. Don't do it until you feel comfortable being okay with other considerations. These ideas are very important. I often wondered why, when a friend of mine and myself went to a cave in India, up in the Himalayas, and around 10,000, 11,000 feet, something like that. And we went in to this cave and we encountered images coming at us. The individual who was there before had died, meditated there for, so many years. On his own, by the way. Not very many people can handle being with yourself a very long time. We need other people to, engage with, communicate with. But here we are. We're in this cave, and it's virtually black. But there's a little bed there. We both sat on it. We decided to meditate. And we did. Meditated for about 5 or 10 minutes. The images that were there were of those people who used to be there, meditating. And they would move with their face right up to your face and look right in your eyes and then pull back and then move up like this and right and if you went to your biases, which my friend did, and he had every right to do so, it was a little bit scary. But he said, Ron, I don't think I can stay here very long. I think I'm going to have to leave. This is too much for me. I can't. It's like as if they're angry. And I said, no, they're not angry. What they're trying to show us is they want to make sure that we're okay being there in a very so-called sacred place, because in this sacred place, the individuals whose domicile had been the cave, literally, they stayed there. Other people came and they fed them. Sounds very strange, doesn't it, in our Western culture? There they all were, and they had the hope of engaging with higher states. See, there are different kinds of hopes. Hope for a 649 ticket, hope for some dog or horse coming in so you win some money, hope that you'll be okay during this pandemic, hope that your love can begin to be manifest inside of you so much that you can actually know and realize for sure that there is a love that is beyond anything that you have experienced before, and it does not interfere with other love that you have. That's an old unreality. But here you are, and there we were. I said, well, I have to stay just for a few more minutes. I won't be long. And then they came right up to my face and looked at me almost, they got the measure of where I could see them, and they were looking into my being. And I thought, if I looked into my being, I'm not always satisfied with how I engage with the world, just like everybody else. And I would have a bias about what I would see at my current place, probably. Do the best I can. Hopefully, we all do. But at the same time, there was just a quiet that occurred. So quiet, silent, as if it was a ripple of quiet. And that was a moment that related to, from my experience, possibility of a spiritual moment. There was nothing, but there was everything. And I thought, wow, gosh, I really lucked out in this one. Of course, then I got up and left, and we walked over and we had something to eat in a restaurant. Not quite a denizen of a cave for a long period of time. But the energy of their beingness raised both of our conscious awareness up enough so that we could actually perceive the depth of engagement that they allowed us to perceive. At that place, I can't say whether they had, I'm answering your question here. I cannot say, because I'm not them, that they had a belief or not. One thing I believe they had was that flow of energy, that loving that I had for a few moments that they were involved with in the meditations that they had had in the past, in that cave, in their relationship with a higher state. There's all kinds of things we can say about these things, Michelle, and I hope that helped a little bit. Not sure what time it is now. Okay. And I hope that idea about hope, the energetic nature of hope is love, my opinion. It is not an answer that everybody agrees with. But if you find yourself feeling better in your relationship with hoping for something, not only for yourself, but for others, then you'll know what I mean. There'll be perhaps a sense of understanding that there is an act of love in the hopes you might have for others. If you can pull away from the need you have to be recognized for the hope you're giving, even the sincerity that you have, then you'll begin to understand your relationship with hope itself and the capacity that you may have to notice that loving aspect in you is so valuable and slips away far too quickly based on what we think we need to do in a given moment. We shift our attention off of these things into a mode that's necessary from our perspective to do what we have to do or engage in the way that we believe we have to engage. And this is very, very temperamental, meaning circumstantial. In every level of circumstance, we adjust how we function. This is part of our development. Some of us do this very well in some things and not so well in others. This is a reality. That's how everyone is. Don't let anyone tell you they're any different, because it's not true. It's not real. Let me say it that way. But in a particular moment, the apparent actions of an individual, whatever they may be, will emphasize an image that relates directly to how a person believes they need to be in relationship to others. You try that with yourself when you're engaging with different people and see if you shift a bit. You may say you don't. I would say you missed it. I wouldn't say it's bad to do it, but it is important for you to see it so you can not judge yourself. It's not helpful. There's another question here. I think I have time. From Lee Martin. Says he's attempting to get an access to lucid dreaming. By the way, Lee, there is a book called Lucid Dreaming that you could, I know you're a reader, so that's why I'm bringing it up. I cannot remember the author, but you look up online and I think you'll find it. It might be helpful. It wasn't that helpful to me, but it could be helpful to you. I don't know. Back in the 70s when I was taking a look at this stuff. Because it was tempting. I think the author came to Ottawa and I was in the audience at the time. And he was quite interested in this area and seemed to have a couple of things that he did that helped him. Various things help different people. And that's just keep that in mind. I did talk a little bit about turning the brow center on so that you can become more consciously aware while you're sleeping. In the last lecture with Toshi, and Toshi's question, you might look back at it and see if you can, some of that makes some sense. You can try some of these things. One of the things that I remember doing because I wanted to do two things. Number one, a part about the lucid part, I had some experience with that and I wanted to see if I could get it a little stronger. And the other thing was, and I'll answer that just in a couple of seconds. If you write down on a scribbler or something, which I'm sure you have, or on your diary or whatever it is, that you want to be aware of your dreams, but mostly only the ones related to your spiritual development. If you do that, might be narrowing down the natural reflex that we have to dream and move into REM sleep. In the dreaming mode, in the lucid dreaming mode or dreaming mode, period. And if you try to do that, keep your focus the best you can on lucid, seeing things lucidly, basically on the spiritual orientation. You want to be helped in your spiritual development, that kind of thing. Then at the same time, if you can, when you're going to lie down, just take a couple of seconds and be aware in front of you, behind you, above your head, down between your head, about here in the center, roughly about there, and reach out about a foot and a half to 2 feet. Hold it there just for a few seconds. Then be aware above your head and behind you. Then ignore it. Get into bed. Reread about 4 or 5 times that you want to be aware of your dreams, and you want to be able to, what you can do, participate in them while watching them. It's basically what you're doing is you're watching you dreaming, and you can do the life map on the dreams. Meaning you're going to have various dreams that come, perhaps. And what you can do is, remember, turn your hands on and keep that in your mind as often as you can while you're awake. And when you do that, you will notice that when you're in the dream world, if you happen to be watching that dream, you may notice yourself standing there watching the dream while you're in the dream. And you just ask for help for it. And ask for help for you, because that dream is you. Every piece in that dream is you. The dilemma with lucid dreams is, what does it take to wake you up in the middle of the night? If you are truly stressed, and it's possible, you will want to sleep because you're tired. And cortisone is flying. Cortisol is flying. I was just corrected by Marlene. Thanks, Marlene. When you're engaging at this level, you want to soften things down in the dream world. Dreams will tend to come to you based on the intensity you have in yourself. It's not that they align with that intensity, but that's the intensity that is there. So it comes along that line that you are involved with during your waking hours. Because when you do soften down and try to fall asleep, you're still intense, still in the same vibratory mode that your daily life presents to you. This can be a little uncomfortable, a little hard to take in too sometimes. So I just looking here to see if I've missed anything, Lee. Yeah, what may happen is, don't underestimate anything you get. Anything. It may be a simple symbol. It may be a simple car racing down the road. Maybe anything. Don't underestimate anything. I hear people saying this all the time. Well, this is not really important, but I had this blah, 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 and it doesn't make any sense. So I don't think it's really that important. And it was only for about 10 seconds or 2 seconds. Keep that scribbler handy, so maybe you can write it down. Maybe you can allow yourself just to awaken a little bit, and even just give you something that really may remind you of the dream. That will help you to shift from one level, the level of the dream, into the coarser level almost totally. Write something down the best you can, Don't be worried if you can't read it. Uh, and then go back in to kind of sleeping. And as you go back in, again ask, literally, the best. It will help you. You're asking that uh, for lucid dreaming, but also basically related to your spiritual development. It is more appropriate, and you might get some interesting things. Because, first of all, those symbologies, and then sometimes you'll get full blown dreams, and then eventually you may get dialogue. Now, with dialogue, it's really interesting because sometimes the ego base that we all have will dialogue to us, talk to us. And so then you have to look at it and say, is this really involved with my spiritual development? Because the internal dialogue that we have is related to primarily self-protection. Or if you are judgmental, you'll have to figure that one out. Then it'll come in terms of being judgmental. All it's trying to show you is you could slow that down. Slow down the judgmental, or slow down this, or slow down that. It's trying to give you hints. Many of us don't like hints because we often can't make too much sense of them. So, but that deeper level, oh boy, it loves to give hints, and we don't necessarily love to interpret them in the way that they're given. They're always given with kindness and respect for the position that an individual is in, regardless of what it is. Why I'm talking about it like this is also at the same time, you can have individuals who have particular ways of looking at life and spiritual growth, and they can also talk to you in a dialogue that relates to what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing. Those higher states, they don't negate. Those coarser levels on the astral plane, they make their money negating. Their money is importance. And they're only doing what they can. So there's no negation in it. It's really hard to allow yourself to try and make some sense of things. If you keep it positive, and I'm suggesting in keeping an open mind, then the openness that you have will be stimulated. It'll help you to be more open to perceiving something that would be helpful in terms of those higher states. Lee, I hope that helped a little bit. And once again, if you're really interested in that book, I made 2 references to reading in this particular case. Remember, this is just trying to help. The book will try to help you to try some things that maybe that I didn't talk about. Lucid dreaming is one. And the other one was, for any of you out there, take a look online and see what you can find that is very constructive and positive between all of the idealistic dialogues that go on, we call religions or philosophies or beliefs. And you're looking for a common bond, the commonality in these things, and it's so much different than pitting one versus another. If you do that, it won't help as much. You already know a few of the that I have recommended in the past, like the Upanishads by Sri Aurobindo, mainly because he was very energetic in terms of spiritual orientations, and some of you know Joseph Needleman and a few others like this um, that are really truly trying to be helpful to people to get them to perceive more or think beyond a world's natural biases. I wish you all well. Please take care of yourselves uh, ongoingly. And we're just going to meditate now for a little while, about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Take care again. Now we'll just close this meditation. Just do a balancing or a grounding or both. And I hope everyone is well. Take care of yourselves. Good night.